All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Unbreakable Success. Dov Baron, thank you so much for sharing so much of your time with us today, sharing some nuggets of wisdom, and for being here with us. Thank you. And how are things for you lately? It's been a little bit since we talked.
It has. And first of all, I want to thank you for having me on. It's an honor and a pleasure to come here to serve you and your audience. I've been, as usual, crazy busy doing all kinds of wonderful things. And people say to me, you're so busy. Do you have time for anybody or anything new? And the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
If you want something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
But I'm doing what I love, so I'm busy.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, obviously you are one of the best when it comes to speaking. Certainly, I think of you. You probably don't know this right now, but I think of you like as one of those distance mentors that I look to and say, that's some of the stuff you're doing is some of the things that I aspire to. So I appreciate you being here. And if I could be selfish, I love having you here because I know I'm going to learn something from you, as I always do with my guests. But certainly to have the opportunity to learn from you and share it with my audience as well is extra special. For people that don't know, you've been listed in multiple places, one of the top 100 motivational speakers and leadership speakers in the world. You've been traveling globally for decades, speaking to so many different audiences. You probably stopped counting many, many years ago. Written many books and all of that. But if we could, we'll get to some nice nuggets where people can use in their business and life, obviously. But I'd like to give people some context about you. Like, where did this Dov Baron thought leadership platform, where did that start for you? If you could take us back in the day for a minute.
Well, I've been speaking for 34 years.
Yeah.
So it started way before there was such a thing as a platform.
Sure.
I went to BEA, Book Expo America, in 2000.
Okay.
And I was there finding out whether I needed a book deal or whether I should get a book deal. And I was talking to some people there, and one of the things they asked me is, "What's your platform?" And I said, "I haven't worn platform since the 70s." I had no idea what they were talking about. Now I have a massive platform. But
you have people right now going, "What is he talking about?"
Exactly. Platform shoes.
Platform
folks.
shoes. People, look it up. Google it.
Exactly. If you're under 40, Google it. Yeah. I didn't know what that was, and I realized from that I needed to go in and build a platform.
Yeah.
And that meant, in many ways, I remember the first time I was asked, "Do you have an article?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I don't write for a newspaper." They go, "No, you need to write articles." I'm like, "I don't even know." I've got well over 500 on my own website now,
Sure.
but it's, I think that the thing with platform building, it's interesting because you're asking about this, and I want people to grasp this because I know you're building your own platform as you're listening or watching right now. And what I want you to think about is that, people are going to come out with you with, what is your platform? And you need a platform. You need, all. You know what you need? You need one article.
Yeah.
You need one article. You need one short video. And when you've done that article, you've done that one video, then you go do another article and you do another video. And you just, instead of it's easy for you to get shell-shocked, go into overwhelm and go, "Oh my God, I'm never going to do it." But remember, who have more than 500 videos on YouTube, more than 500 episodes on my radio show, more than 500 articles on my podcast, on my blog, plus thousands everywhere else.
Sure.
You know what? Started with one.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that you start with one. Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk, who we all know, started with one.
Sure enough.
Everybody starts with one. You don't start at 1,000. So be patient with yourself. And the thing about being patient with yourself is then you get better.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about, I need to get to my first 100. No, you need to do one that's good. Yeah. And then do another that's good. Yeah. And do a third one that's a bit better than the last two.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Sage advice, because I've certainly been there. Certainly been there with people that I've spoke to and clients who get the, what do I need to build? And they think of building this huge thing, obviously the platform, but you just have to do something, get started with something. So how did that look for you when you were having this, you're talking about having this conversation, somebody kind of challenging you about this platform or as they described it back then? How did that evolution kind of play out for you as time progressed, and what felt right for you as you were doing it?
Part of the thing for me was I realized I'd been speaking for years and didn't really have any product.
Mm.
and didn't really have any consumable content, as in
Yeah.
articles and videos and audios. So what I did was I originally started with just I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to do. We tried doing video. It was back in the day. It was too
Yeah.
hard. It was too expensive and too
Sure.
slow. It just wouldn't work. But what we could do then was what was called teleseminars, which
Yeah.
are teleconferences, and then I would have 400 or 500 people at a time on those.
Yeah.
But what I just started out with those was just recording somebody asking me some questions, and I just said, "Ask me 5 questions about this subject."
Yeah.
You can ask me anything you want. I don't care, but just ask me 5 about the subject. And I would just, I would spin on that because I knew my material enough
Sure.
that I could do that. And we took those recordings and we put them up as little audio samples on my website. And that was hard to even load back in those
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
But a little bit of audio sample where somebody could listen to me answer a question about this for a minute, maybe 3 at the very most. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the beginning. And then somebody said to me, why haven't you got any articles yet? And honestly, I was so resistant for writing for so many years
Yeah.
because of a childhood trauma at school and all that kind of
Yeah.
crap. And then somebody said, well, have you tried transcribing those articles, those little interviews? I was like, no. So somebody did that, and I looked over them and tweaked them a bit, and then somebody did the grammatical side, and then we started just giving that away.
Yeah.
So that was where it started for me. But if I was starting today, where would I start today? Oh, that's easy. I would make myself a discipline, I'd give myself a challenge, and that is 30 days, 30 videos.
Mm.
Right? And people go, oh, I couldn't do 30 videos. Yeah, you could. Because if I sat down to you and said, I want you to come up with 30 questions to which you know the answer to in your subject, could you do that? You go,
Sure.
well, I don't know. Maybe I could come up with 5. And you go, okay, go do 5. When you come up with 5, I know you'll get 10. When you do 10, I can know you do 20. When you do 20, I know you can do 30. It's no problem.
Yeah.
So just stop. Yeah. And you record, and just record them. Either do them, challenge yourself to do 1 every day, or if you're in the mood, you might do 3 that day.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you can say, well, okay, I can give myself a break for a couple of days or not. I can just keep going. It's fine. But I would start with those simple little videos because they give somebody a chance to connect with you.
Yeah.
They see you. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
You just have to decide what it is you want to talk about. And by the way, one of the things you can talk about, and I want to help everybody with this, if you want to talk about something and you go, I don't know if I know enough, then don't talk about it from knowing it. Talk about it from not knowing about it. This is one of the things where thought leaders fall behind. I'm going to come at it and I'm going to be the expert. I go, okay, that's great. But you know what? I promise you there's lots of experts out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you come at it on the other side, very few people do. You come at it on the side of, I'm the advocate, not the expert. This is another position. So the expert is, I've been doing what I do for 34 years. I'm an expert. I've got books. I've done, okay. But you've been doing this for 20 minutes, right? And, people are going to look at you and go, you don't know anything. But if you come at it as an advocate, that's entirely different. So come at it as, oh, hi, I'm Bob. I am entering into the entrepreneurial world. And I know that this thing is a landmine. It's filled with landmines. I don't know where to step. So I'm going to give a video each day, and I'm going to ask a question to entrepreneurs who've been in business for more than 5 years. And you get to watch that. You get to see if you agree with my question, if you think I should tweak my question, and we're going to ask entrepreneurs to answer. Oh my God, now you're the advocate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every one of us knows who Napoleon Hill is.
Sure.
Right? We all read Think and Grow Rich. But do you know that Napoleon Hill was not an expert? Napoleon Hill was a reporter that Andrew Carnegie sent out in to meet the most successful people and said, find out the common threads. So he just was an advocate for people who wanted to be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's all kinds of ways to build that platform today without thinking about, oh my God, I got to get a book out, or I've got to do 300 videos. None of that. You don't need that. It's so easy now.
Yeah. It's brilliant because, one of the best pieces of advice I got, and it's still one of those things I work on to follow the advice was, just start teaching everything you learn. Like, number one, learn, be a lifetime student. But as you learn things, teach them. And like you said, there's going to be some things where, Dov Baron, if somebody's going to ask you to speak on leadership, boom, multiple decades of experience, been all over the planet doing it. But if, as you said, if somebody's not in that position to have all that experience, they can just learn something and teach it, or display it, as you said, as you're learning it, and as you're learning it from the experts, and boom, there's a platform from that standpoint. I love the advice. I got to hit on something. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead then.
No,
Okay, I was
gonna
just going to say something about what I was just saying, just to help people get clear.
Sure.
Because it's something you just said. I think we best learn by what we teach.
Sure. Yeah.
But I want to warn you, if you're starting out, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people starting out trying to make. So you just learned A, and now you're going to teach A to your audience. Great. If you try to teach A as an expert, you will look like an idiot.
Yes.
Don't teach it as an expert.
Yeah.
Give full credit to where you learned it.
Yeah.
So I was just on Dov Baron's platform. I read this article, and he laid out these things. I want to share that with you, because here's the 3 things he laid out. Put it on me.
Yeah.
That way, A, if it's shit, you don't get hard time for it. Right?
Yeah.
B, it shows the audience that you have rapport with them, you have compassion for them, you have empathy for them, and that you are not greedy, that you're willing to share. But not only that, that you've moved your ego to the side because you've leveraged the authority.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. When you leverage the authority of somebody else, it elevates you.
Sure.
And it's the mistake everybody makes. They go, oh, well, I don't want to look foolish, so I'm not going to mention that I learned it from Dov, or I learned it from Aaron, or I'm not going to mention that because I want to look good. It will actually make you look small. Yeah. So flip the other way. So I just want to give you that, because it was what you said was important and powerful, but that's the little piece on the end.
Sure. Beautiful. I love the nuance. I love the nuance. It brings me full circle, because you mentioned something very quickly earlier about at the time, years ago, obviously, you didn't feel yourself as a writer, and now you are an author of 13 books now, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around that dozen or so mark. So you've obviously gotten over that. How did that process change for you? Because that's obviously one of those big things that especially newer entrepreneurs are thinking of, should I write the book, shouldn't I, and how can I, and all that kind of stuff. Things that, as you know for sure, once you get it done, gradually becomes less scary. But how did that evolve for you as someone who wasn't really into writing to now being a multi-time author?
Right. So for me, as you know, I had a mountain climbing fall in 1990, and about 2 years later, a friend of mine came to visit me from Australia, and he said, "Where's your book?" Like, what book? And he goes, "Your book." And I go, "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't got a book." He goes, "That's the point." And I said, well, I can't write a book. And he goes, "Why not?" I go, "Because I'm terrible at spelling, and I'm even worse at grammar." And he said to me, "You know something?" He says, "I've seen you speak," like he'd seen me speak all over Australia and here. And he said, "You're a fabulous speaker." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you very much." He goes, "And when it comes to writing, there are these people," he goes, "they live in this special place." And I go, "What the hell are you talking about?" He goes, "No, they're not trolls who live under a bridge. They're called editors, you idiot." I was like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. Honestly, it never crossed my mind that there could be an edit, and it was my ego. Totally was my ego. If I send a piece of shit to an editor, they're going to go, "The guy's a dumbass," and I couldn't live with that. So my ego was way too big for that. Yeah. As opposed to saying, here's a guy who was severely dyslexic as a kid, right? Who's got some great ideas but doesn't know how to put it together. Let me become and so I went looking for a developmental editor, and I found 2, and what they did was awful.
Oh, jeez.
It was awful. So they were phenomenal at changing my grammar and my spelling, but my voice went away. Okay. And my friend said to me, "This is terrible because it doesn't sound like you." Yeah. And he said, "If you were to say it again, how would you say it?" And he goes, "That's what you need to say. You just need," he says, "you keep trying to write like a writer, write like a speaker." Yeah. Because people love hearing you speak. He goes, "Then get the editor to correct the grammar and spelling on that." Sure. And it was like, boom. Oh my God, that became so easy. Because somebody said to me, because I sit with editors, you go, "Well, what does this mean?" And I say, "What do you mean, what does it mean?" "It means what it says." And she goes, okay, you read it out loud. So I read it out loud and go, oh, okay, yeah, here's what it means. Because I left a chunk out
Yeah.
because I referenced it earlier in my presentation.
Yeah.
So it made sense in the presentation, but it didn't in writing. So stop writing writing like you think writers write. Write like a speaker with your own voice, and then get an editor to help you. That's how I started. That was that was what made it so easy.
Yeah.
Because I stopped trying to be a writer.
Yeah.
Now, you should know there are writers out there who speak, and they should have remained writers. Because it's like watching paint dry. Right?
I've seen that for sure.
Right? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, you are a fabulous cure for insomnia.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Great information, but terribly presented.
Sure.
But as a speaker, it's a much easier transition because you have the dynamics and the energy. And the only way you can balls it up is if you give that away.
Yeah.
So you try to do it correctly. Yeah. So give up getting correct, put it in your own voice, then hand it to an editor and make sure the editor doesn't lose your voice, and you'll be rocking.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. It makes so much sense, really, if we all think about it, because people love conversations, people love back and forth like this, people love stories, and that's how most of us talk anyway. It's certainly how someone like you or anyone who was a coach or something like that, where they engage in that kind of dialogue with people. It's natural. It feels natural. It sounds natural, and it keeps you engaged. So to translate that into a book, it makes that book engaging. And next thing you know, you're flipping pages. You're flipping pages because you want to hear the rest of the story, or you want to continue the conversation, as opposed to you're kind of sick of being preached to or being given all this data.
Well, this is the thing. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
There was a time, I'm old enough to remember, there's a time when the expert lectured at you and you took notes.
Yeah.
And if you do that today, even to people who are over 38, because that's the upper end of millennials, most of us who were over that, we're all bored with it too. We don't want it either.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing, I know because I've been in the business a long time, I'm seeing speakers who around my age who are dying. I mean, these are guys who were the top of the world, who like nobody shows up for because it's like watching paint dry.
Sure.
Because somebody's talking at them. People don't want that.
Sure.
And if you look on my website where it says speaking, it doesn't say keynote speeches. It says keynote conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm having a conversation with my audience.
I know you had a campaign a couple of years ago, was it? Kill the keynote?
Yeah, kill the keynote.
Right. Yeah. I love it.
5 million people on that.
Yeah.
Kill the keynote. Just like, I know I'm bored.
Sure.
So I got to guess the audience is.
But it's the reality of the situation these days is, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, is people are not impressed by information anymore because you can get information anywhere. People are drawn in by context, by something that feels relevant to them. And quite frankly, people want to have some form of entertainment. Everybody's fighting for attention, professionally or personally. People, if you're new and you hop on social media thinking I'm going to suddenly become famous because I'm on Facebook now, it's laughable because everybody's on there. So to just say I'm going to just put out information and assume people are going to be interested, I think is a bit of a mistake. Would you agree?
I think it's more than a mistake. I think it's a trap.
Yeah.
Right. So because if you're competing because you have the best information, you will die very poor.
Yeah.
Right. And so, there was a time when that was true.
Sure.
We used to say content is king.
Sure.
Right. Content is not king. It might be it might be prince, might be princess, but it ain't. It's not king anymore because emperor is entertainment.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So the information has to be relevant. It has to be engaging. It has to be entertaining. And if it's not all of that, then you are not going to keep your audience. Yeah. And by the way, that matters more than facts. If you don't believe me, there's a guy screaming fake news every day.
Yeah.
And he's not necessarily delivering facts, but about half the country think he's full. He's the finest guy in the world. So you have to understand that. And I want everybody to grasp this, particularly if you're starting out. I want to help you with this. What you need to know about human beings is we are tribal.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We want to belong. We want to be part of a tribe. And if we don't feel like a tribe, there is a pull for us to find a tribe to belong to.
Yeah.
Your job as a leader, as a thought leader, is to create a tribe. You can't create a tribe by jumping on somebody else's tribe. That's number one. You can't start a tribe by being wishy-washy.
Yeah.
That's number two. As my good friend Larry Wingert said, I'm sure you know Larry. Larry Wingert is one of the great leadership speakers,
Sure.
the pit bull of personal development.
Yeah.
And him and I were sitting in his place, we're having a tequila, we're sitting around, and he says, if I don't get at least 2 death threats a week, I'm not doing my job.
I love it.
But it's that willingness to say something that matters to you, not to be provocative.
Sure.
Because I don't give a shit about that, but to say something that, when I work with leaders, as you know, I also train people to be speakers, Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership. And one of the things I ask them, I say, what hill are you willing to die on? And most people don't know. If you don't know what hill you're willing to die on, nobody's going to follow you.
Yeah.
No, because it's like, well, you kind of, I watched this we had a local election where I live on the weekend, and I saw the debate between the 4 leaders for the mayoral position, and one of the guys was very smart, but he flip-flopped on a couple of issues in the last 2 months, and the other 3 candidates just cut him to pieces.
Sure.
The guy who won is kind of an ass, and I watched him with my wife, and I said, kind of assy, right? And she goes, yeah. Now, I agreed with some of his policies, but he was kind of assy with the other guys. And I went, that's interesting. And I said to my missus, I think he's going to win. And she said, why? So because that's the era we live in.
Yeah.
It's not about liking asses, but it's about liking people who are not willing to flip-flop. Yeah. Because then I know yes or no.
Sure.
You want to create a gathering, you want to create a following, you want to create a tribe, find a hill you're willing to die on, and then bury yourself in it. And what I mean by that is study everything about it, consume it, eat it, sleep it, breathe it, become that pain in the ass who won't talk about anything else, so that it embodies and embroils you into every cell of your being. And then when somebody talks about it, you can go anywhere they want.
Yeah.
And they may not agree with you, but they will never think that you are under-knowledgeable.
Sure. A beautiful point. I love that. I love it. And it's so true, and I find myself noticing it myself when I listen to other people or listen to podcasts or read something, and even if I'm reading or listening to someone who I just flat out don't agree with, I keep listening because I'm drawn in. I'm kind of curious. I want to know how this person's thinking. I'm thinking, what am I missing that I'm not thinking like this guy or this girl? But and it doesn't mean that you're going to change your own opinion, but that it just draws people in, that confidence, that being willing to stick to a subject or stick to a perspective and own it and to say, this is me.
Absolutely. But you said something that I think everybody's got to learn from. And so I know the hill I'm willing to die on.
Sure.
But if you're going to be a leader, a thought leader or a leader in any form, there is one personality trait you must train and discipline, and that is curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
You just said it, right?
Yeah.
You've got to become deeply curious. So when Steve Bannon got thrown out of the White House, the first thing, as soon as I heard that news, I reached out to try and get him on my show.
Really?
Immediately. Awesome. I didn't get him, but I wanted him on my show. And people said, well, why the hell would you want him? I don't think you agree with Steve Bannon. I go, what the hell's that going to do with it?
Yeah. Sure.
I'm incredibly curious. The guy is obviously very smart.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious about where he's actually coming from. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about what his big picture is. I'm still fascinated. If I could get him on the show today, I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's a fascinating human being. And people say, well, would you have interviewed Hitler? Absolutely. I would, because I'm curious about human beings, because that is my hill to die on, is I'm fascinated with what drives human beings.
Yes.
Because I'm a master at discovering what drives them so they can see it and can use it to empower themselves as entrepreneurs, as speakers, as leaders, or CEOs or athletes. Doesn't matter. That is my hill to die on.
Yeah.
Now, if you go, well, that's not my fascination, then you shouldn't interview Steve Bannon or Adolf Hitler.
Sure.
But if your thing is sales, I'm just using that as an example,
sure,
then you should go after people who sell in a way you hate.
Yeah.
Who sell in a way you love. Like, you've got to take in all of it, become deeply curious about it.
Yeah.
I'm a speaker. I've been so for 34 years. I have purposely gone to see people speak who I don't like. I've
Yeah.
purposely gone. I was invited to go see somebody. I was like, oh, I can't stand this guy.
Yeah.
What an arrogant asshole. Got to go see him because he has something, because he's been on the stage for 15 years and he's doing very well. I want to know what that is.
Yeah.
So be curious about your industry, your subject.
Yeah.
Become fiercely curious about it so it's consuming.
Yeah, and that's brilliant, and I love that you say that. And to everyone listening, I hope you're paying attention to what Dov's saying, and I hope you're connecting the dots. That there's a reason why he's been so successful for so long, because he's been willing to, number one, to be curious, and number two, to study and understand human behavior. Because if anybody's going to be successful in business today, you've got to understand what your audience, what your clients, the industry that you're serving, you have to understand what they want and how you can get it to them and how you can communicate it to them, how they want to hear it, what's going to turn them on and what's going to turn them off. If you're not studying human behavior, and pardon my soapbox here, but if you're not doing your diligence to learn about what makes people tick, and you think you're going to be successful in business, you're fighting a losing battle, because you have to understand some basic tenets of what drives people and that human psychology element. And Dov, you're giving us a perfect example of why someone can be in business and thriving and growing for so long like you have, because you've been willing to put in that work and in the trenches to learn it and live it. So I appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you. I sincerely appreciate that. And when you talk about, human behavior, mine it's all consuming. It's what I do.
Sure.
But what I would say to you as a thought leader, as an entrepreneur, whatever it might be, is that's a big subject and can be overwhelming. So find out the psychology of your people.
Yes.
Right. So if your people are entrepreneurs who make 10 grand to 20 grand on the side hustle, then find out the psychology of those people. Find out what drives them. If your people are people who are scaling to their first billion, then find out the psychology of those people. So whatever it is, so I know the psychology of humans, but if I decided, you know what, I'm going to go after people who really believe in auras, I want to know what their psychology is. I want to know what drives them, because people who believe in auras don't do certain things, and they only do certain things. And when you know that, you can tap into that market beautifully because you actually understand them.
Yeah, that's a brilliant nuance. I love it. Thank you for piggyback on that, because that is such a brilliant point to not only just understand human behavior, but narrow it down to what your focus is, what your niche is, what your business is. And tighten it up in that aspect. I know Dov, I love this. We're 30 minutes in, and to be honest, I truly wanted. My intention was, it's why I love doing a show, because I kind of just I come up with a little loose plan in my head of how I think an interview or conversation is going to go, and then I just throw it through the window.
Out of the window.
Yeah, throw it out of the window. Let's just talk. But I really wanted to get into. You touched on it a little bit earlier. The story you had a pretty traumatic incident, something we have in common, not the same thing, but we both had an event, physically a jarring event. It's probably an understatement in your case for sure. But I'd love to have you to have the opportunity, if you don't mind, to share your story, what happened to you, and how that is condensed as you can, how that sort of shifted your perspective in life. I'll let you explain the story of how that went down.
Thank you for asking. I sincerely appreciate it. In 1990, I'd already been speaking for 6 years. I was probably the most successful I'd been up until that point. I was on TV, radio, newspapers, traveling all over, speaking all over. It was all going pretty great. I was pretty fried and exhausted. I came back to Vancouver, which was my new home for the last couple of years by then. And my manager had scheduled me 4 days off, and I was scheduled like months in advance, so it had been grabbed. I went up to a place called Whistler, which some of you may know, which is where the Winter Olympics were held in 2010. And we went up there, a buddy of mine and I, but it was June. It was beautiful, the sunshine, and sort of hung out and had a really relaxing time. And then I decided that we'd go for a hike to a place called Brandywine Falls, which is this magnificent waterfall, comes off the glacier and runs down and then falls 200 feet off a cliff into the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's magnificent to look at from the top, but I wanted to see what it was like from the bottom because my mainline drug of the day for many years before was adrenaline.
Yeah.
I was a full-blown adrenaline junkie. So we hiked down, and I challenged my buddy that we should try and get behind the waterfall. So you got a 70-mile-an-hour spray coming at you, and we're walking across moss-covered rocks. It's incredibly difficult, but we got behind that.
Yeah.
And the gap is like, it's like 4 feet. Put your arm out, it would take your arm off because it's tons and tons of water. And we stood behind that. I came out on the other side, and I felt like Superman. I felt indestructible.
Yeah.
And so I said to my buddy, let's not hike back up. And he's like, well, what else are we going to do? And I go, let's climb the face. And he's like, what are you talking about? Now, if you know anything about mountain climbing, you know that you have ropes and you have safety lines and hooks and all kinds of things. And if you free climb, you don't have those, but you have dry clothing, you have the right footwear, and you have chalk. We had none of those. So, so this was free climbing for the moderately insane. No, actually, fully insane. But as I said, I was an adrenaline junkie. And at about, without the details, that are about 120 feet, which is about 12 stories up, I reached for a rock that dislodged a bigger rock that, bam, hit me in the face and sent me hurtling down at maximum velocity, where I landed on my face on boulders. Not on gravel, not on grass, but on boulders. And it completely destroyed my face. I can tell you the gory details. There's no need.
Sure.
What I will tell you is that I have had somewhere between 10 and 12 reconstructive surgeries. The pain and recovery was insane. I've been a bodybuilder since I was 19 years old. And the day I fell, 3 weeks later, I was 50 pounds lighter. My just completely emaciated jaw wired to hold it in place and closed and drinking through a straw and one eye up here and one eye down there and all kinds of weird stuff. But when people would ask me, how you doing? I would lie. See, I was born in a ghetto. I was born in a tough environment where you learn to put it on no matter what you're. And I'd been in leadership. I'd owned companies in 3 continents. So I'd been in leadership. I'd been a boxer, was a martial artist. So, I knew how to be tough. And so when people would say to me, how you doing? I'd say, I'm great. Meaning I'm great. My teeth were wired closed.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anybody to know that I was actually in a very dark depression. And then about 9 months in, when I don't even think I'd smiled in 9 months. And I really started to believe that maybe I was never going to be happy again. And my mates said, let's go for a night out. And I went for a night out. My wires were off, and I went for a night out with the lads. And I had a great night. And I laughed, and I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I am coming back. Because I used to keep saying, when people ask me, I'd say, I'm great, I'm coming back. I'm great, I'm coming back. And I thought, maybe I am. And I walked in the door, and as I opened the door in this dark, the light shone in to the kitchen, and I could see across the floor garbage festooned. There was empty cans, coffee grinds, kitty litter, it was a big mess, and it smelled bad, and I knew exactly who the culprit was. And I went from feeling elated to enraged.
Yeah.
And I went looking for the culprit. And when I got into the living room, there was the culprit curled up on my couch looking so comfortable. And I lifted my hand in rage. And I'll tell you, in all seriousness, I was about to strike. I stopped.
Yeah.
Something in me stopped because that's not who I am. And I picked up the cat. And I realized the cat was cold and it was dead.
Oh, gosh.
And I fell to my knees and I began to weep. I didn't cry. When you have that sobbing, and I was suddenly realized, why am I sobbing for a cat that I didn't even like? And I didn't like the cat. The cat was given to me as a gift by a manipulative girlfriend. So I didn't know what was going on. And then suddenly I realized I was crying for the loss of the life that I had. That dove was dead. There was no coming back. And I was on the floor in the fetal position. And I knew before me there was 3 paths. To try and come back, which I'd failed miserably at, and that was never going to happen. The second path was the most seductive path, which was to stay here in this place of feeling like a victim, and that I was justified, that I was, shit happened and it was not my fault. And there was a third path, and it was to move forward with purpose. And that was all I knew. And I didn't know what that meant, but it was terrifying. Terrifying. Because I couldn't use any excuses and I couldn't talk about going back. I'd have to move forward. And I began to examine what my purpose was. Now, prior to that, I was doing a lot of work on myself and continued to had done for many, many years, and felt like I was never going to come into the speaking world again. And I did the work to find my purpose. And the problem with finding your purpose is you don't know. I mean, you do everything you can to be aligned with your purpose, but you don't actually know if you're doing it.
Right.
Because
Sure.
it's not like a box gets checked. Did I save $100? Check. Yes. No, it's different than that.
Yeah.
And then about 2 years later, I was teaching a multi-day training. And at the end of the training, people were very generous, as they usually are. And they stood at the end and thanked me, one by one, lined up. But I have had a plexiglass shield that many of us know as speakers, meaning that nothing actually gets in.
Right.
And I don't want that. I actually want to let people in because they're being generous with me. And so how do I lower the shield? I become cognitive. And so I say to them, so they would say, thank you. And I'd say, can I ask you specifically for what? Mm-hmm. Right? Which makes me stop and makes them stop and makes it. So this lady was wonderful. She was probably at the latest early 40s, nice looking lady. And I said, she said, thank you. And I said, can I ask you specifically for what? And she was wonderful. She took a pause. And she said, for my grandchildren. And I said, you don't look old enough to have grandchildren. And she said, I'm not. And I said, I don't understand. She goes, see that lady over there? I said, yeah. I said, the pregnant girl? She goes, yeah. She says, that's my daughter. She goes, and in the 3 days we've been here and we've learned about our own purpose and what matters to us, she goes, you've changed our relationship. You've changed my relationship with my son-in-law who's with her, and it will change my relationship with my grandchild when my grandchild arrives in the world. And at that point, like, my eyes started to leak, and I realized that when you're on purpose, you are doing something that is a rippled legacy. I'm here to impact people's lives who may never know my name and whose name I may never know. Yeah. That grandchild will probably never know my name. And maybe it will be changed, and that grandchild's child will certainly never know my name. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That because I'm on purpose, I'm having positive impact in the world. Yeah. And that transformed everything for me. That fall was, at the time, the worst thing that could have happened for me. And afterwards, when I did the work, because that's what it calls you to do, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But if somebody had said that to me on the day I'd have fallen, I would have punched him in the nose.
Absolutely.
But later on, certainly with retrospect, definitely.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, Dov, I thank you for sharing that. I mean, there's so many, everyone listening, I'm sure there's so much to take in from that, and certainly some powerful lessons to learn and ponder. And I have to say more, first and foremost, thank you for taking that situation and making that decision. You had mentioned you had 3 choices to make. I'm grateful for sure that you made that third choice and are continuing today, so many years later, to do the work that you're doing today, and having impacted, God, at this point, countless people that are alive and grandchildren and great grandchildren to come. I'm sure we can get exponential with this conversation for certain. So thank you so much, Dov. I can't think of a better way to peak this wonderful conversation I've enjoyed so much than right there. So of course, the most important question I can ask, not for myself, but for everyone who's listening, is for people that are listening right now, and I'm sure they want to learn more about your world and what you do. Please let us know how to find you quickly so people can continue their conversation with you. By the way, make sure you let them know about your podcast because it is a powerful podcast. For everyone that's listening, I'm going to let Dov tell you what his podcast is with an order of go subscribe right now. It is a life-changing conversation with some really wonderful people, including Dov, but many amazing guests that he has. So with that, Dov, please let us know.
Thank you, Aaron. That's very kind. You can find out more about all of those things at fourmontyleadership.com. You can click on podcasts and you'll get access to the podcast. As Aaron said, it is the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. It's not just about leadership and loyalty. Leadership and Loyalty podcast. It's the #1 podcast in the world for Fortune 500 listeners. Inc.com made it the #1 podcast to listen to make you a better leader. We've had all kinds of beautiful accolades, and
Sure.
we also go out through traditional radio stations across the United States, and I have my own Roku channel, and there's sort of somewhere around about 800,000 streams a month. So it's a pretty popular show, and I encourage you, as Aaron said, please, I'd love you to go listen, review, and subscribe to it. You can find my blog also on fourmontyleadership.com. It's under icons. As I said, there's over 500 articles on there. You can find me on YouTube, Dov Baron, Full Monty Leadership, on LinkedIn, Dov Baron, DovBaron, Twitter @the Dov Baron, Instagram, Dov Baron Leadership. So all the usual places. Google me, you'll find me all over the place. I write for Entrepreneur and a bunch of other magazines.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: honestly, as Aaron said, I've had a podcast for a long time, 10 years. And I say this at the end of my show: information is worth the hole in the donut. Its transformation only comes from application. So here's the thing I want you to do, and this is important. Aaron's here putting out these shows, finds you great guests, brings those guests on the show to supply you, to give you the insight and the knowledge and the value that you get. You don't pay for that. That's free, but it's not free for Aaron. It costs him his time, his energy, his effort, his commitment, all your things, production. There's all kinds of costs you can't even consider. What I want you to do is I want you to go to iTunes. I want you to go to his YouTube channel. I want you to subscribe to his channel. And I want you to thank him for bringing the guests on. And what's more, I'm going to give you this, because Aaron asked you how you can get in touch with me. I'm crazy. I'm going to give you my personal email. My personal email is Dov, D-O-V, DovBaron.com, Dov@dovbaron.com. Write to me, CC Aaron, and tell us what you got out of this show, what you're going to do with it, because it's great they brought you fabulous information, but you got to use it.
Yeah.
So write to us, tell us what you're going to do with it. And if I can be of service to you, that also gives you a way to get access to me, that you'll jump a line that will probably push you out for about 6 months to get to connect. But you can jump that line. And if I can be of service to you in some way that you would like to work with me, we can talk about that too. But let Aaron know. Rate, review, and subscribe to his show. And I'd love you to do the same on mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dov. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being here. And thank you, everyone, of course, for listening. I'll make sure I link up all those connections, depending on your preference and how you want to get a hold of Dov. I'll link up all up in the show notes at aaronkeithhawkins.com as usual. If you go to aaronkeithhawkins.com, just type Dov in the search bar, D-O-V. If you don't feel like looking for the link, just use the search bar. Type Dov, D-O-V. That'll bring you to this episode, and you can get all the links to Dov, his book, his works, his podcast. I'll just make sure I link some of his many articles in there as well, so you can really get beyond what you heard today. Get a better idea of what he's about. Dov, I love having you on. You instantly struck me as one of those leadership experts who weren't just a leadership expert. You kind of joked, but you're serious about how your show is not just about leadership and loyalty. It's about so many other things. I love the fact that you're a thinker, and you're always thinking about the humanity behind everything we do. And I have no doubt that's why so many leaders around the world are so enthralled with what you do, because it's a culture change, I know, in many organizations that you work in. So I recognize that and appreciate it, and appreciate you and your work, and wish you a massively continued success. Everybody listening, make sure you reach out to Dov and thank him, as he mentioned earlier, personally. Dov, we will definitely stay in touch. I appreciate your time, and I'll speak with you soon, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.